Evelyn Carter. 34 had always been the hard-to-define child in her family, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she simply didn't fit. She wasn't the high achiever like her older sister Lauren, nor the golden boy like her younger brother Ethan. She just existed in the middle, quiet and easily overlooked. In the Carter household, pride didn't need to be spoken aloud. Everyone just knew who it belonged to. Lauren, the eldest, was the Golden Standard Honor Student Homecoming Queen, top graduate in finance from Cornell. Now she worked at Sibling Capital Partners, a prestigious investment firm, and her name was dropped in nearly every family gathering with reverent pride. Ethan, the baby of the family, was charming, funny, and impossible not to like. He never had to try too hard. Affection was handed to him freely from the start. Evelyn's parents, James and Margaret Carter, often celebrated their two shining stars over family dinners, as though their achievements were proof of flawless parenting. But Evelyn, since childhood, she'd lived in books, computers, and thoughts no one quite understood. While Lauren was fitted for pageant gowns and Ethan played basketball with Dad, Evelyn stayed in her room teaching herself to code from used library books. No one stopped her, but no one encouraged her either. Her passions were filed under odd hobbies. Once in 10th grade, Evelyn told her father she wanted to study computer science. He chuckled dismissively. Sweetheart, girls should choose something stable. Finance, law, maybe education. Programming's for basement-dwelling nerds. Evelyn didn't argue. She just nodded and never brought it up again. She learned to protect her passion like a fragile secret kept safe from judgment. Even when she left for college, a small tech-focused school in Massachusetts, her mother gave her a look half confusion, half disappointment. Lauren had been sent off to Manhattan with fanfare and designer heels. Evelyn quietly carried a worn-out backpack to a dorm room. No send-off, no congratulations banner. But Evelyn didn't resent them. She understood her family wasn't malicious, just trapped in a narrow vision of success. To them, success meant titles, tailored suits, glossy photos from high-profile events. Evelyn, with her clunky laptop and dream of building tech solutions for underserved communities, was always going to be the quiet daughter, still figuring things out. She had grown used to being forgotten. In family photos, she was often half out of frame. In stories, her name rarely came up. But within that silence, Evelyn learned to build something unshakable inner strength, the kind no one could take from her. While other kids followed conventional tracks, Evelyn Carter quietly chose a different path, one her family never quite understood nor tried to. As her sister Lauren entered the world of finance with cocktail parties, international conferences, and a six-figure paycheck, Evelyn spent most of her college years in libraries, computer labs, or freelancing for small local businesses. She built websites for laundromats, bakeries, even a veterinary clinic, anything that let her learn and improve. She worked hard, often staying up past midnight to meet deadlines, but her efforts were never considered real by her family. When she excitedly told her father about starting a software company aimed at helping nonprofit organizations, he simply frowned. "You should focus on finding a stable job," he said. "One with insurance, a 401k. Don't chase something so abstract." Her mother smiled softly. "That's a cute idea, sweetheart, but your sister's interning at Sibling. Maybe learn from her example." The comparisons never stopped. Even when Evelyn graduated top of her class, she was described as doing fine, just figuring things out. At her graduation, her father leaned toward her mother just loud enough for Evelyn to hear and said, "Well, at least she finished." It became a pattern. Every time Evelyn tried to share something about her work, someone would steer the conversation back to Lauren or Ethan. Over time, she stopped offering updates. She didn't mention her new projects, her first client, or her first signed contract. She realized silence could be armor, and being underestimated, while painful, offered her a rare kind of freedom. When Evelyn co-founded her first startup with 2 college friends, a platform for nonprofits, she didn't throw a launch party or tell her family. They rented a small office in a converted warehouse and coded from dawn to dusk. While her family threw a champagne party for Lauren's new condo in New York, Evelyn quietly signed a modest but meaningful contract with a local social impact group. She didn't say a word, not out of shame, but because she'd grown used to being dismissed. She understood that if her success didn't come with applause, it at least came with truth. As the company grew, hiring staff, gaining traction, opening offices abroad, Evelyn continued her habit of staying silent at family gatherings. While Lauren spoke proudly about million-dollar portfolios, Evelyn peeled fruit or cleared dishes. She didn't crave their praise, but sometimes she wondered if I wore a blazer and spoke louder, would they hear me? Eventually, she understood what she built wasn't meant to prove anything to anyone. She built it because she believed in it. And along that path, being underestimated became her invisibility cloak, the space where she quietly built something extraordinary, untouched by expectations or doubt. While many of her peers chased social media fame or climbed corporate ladders for flashy job titles, Evelyn Carter was quietly building an empire, one line of code, one breakthrough at a time. No noise, no fanfare, just progress, steady and intentional. At 24 Novatech Solutions, the startup Evelyn had co-founded opened its first modest office in a converted industrial building just outside Boston. There were no big signs, no press coverage, and certainly no venture capital headlines. But inside, they were building something powerful, software that would change how nonprofit organizations accessed and used technology. It was just the 3 of them in the beginning, Evelyn, Sam, and Priya, doing everything from coding and customer support to cleaning the floors. They had no deep pockets, but they had vision. Evelyn didn't lead with motivational speeches. She led by showing up day after day, night after night, with quiet determination and a strategic mind far beyond her years. While her friends posted photos from their glass-walled offices and exotic vacations, Evelyn wore jeans and a t-shirt, clocking 14-hour days, debugging systems, and perfecting user interfaces. It was exhausting. But every small milestone felt earned, grounded, and real. By 28, Novatech had grown to a team of 30 opened offices in 2 states and was beginning to expand internationally. And yet, Evelyn stayed out of the spotlight. Publicly, she signed her name only as E. Carter, leading many to assume the CEO was a middle-aged man. She didn't do talk shows. She didn't give keynote speeches. She believed results should speak louder than sound bites. In one rare interview for a tech magazine, Evelyn declined a solo photo and asked for the entire team to be pictured instead. "I don't need to be remembered," she said. "I just want what we build to be worth remembering." She wasn't hiding, she was choosing. Her loft apartment in Boston's Back Bay was a converted industrial space, sleek and stylish, without being flashy. Her car, a limited-run electric sedan with a 6-month wait list, looked like any other modest commuter vehicle. She dressed simply, choosing comfort over brand labels. That quiet was intentional, not out of insecurity, but as a statement, I don't need to be seen to know I'm on the right path. Her parents still had no real understanding of what she did. When extended family asked, they'd shrug and call it some sort of tech thing. Her sister Lauren, during one of her usual 20-minute monologues about promotions, once advised Evelyn to consider getting a stable job with proper benefits. Evelyn had simply smiled, sitting in her glass-walled office on the 32nd floor, overlooking downtown Boston, and replied, "I'm doing fine. Thanks for checking in." Beneath the surface of the uncertain daughter, Evelyn had quietly built a company worth hundreds of millions, and no one in her family had any idea. But she didn't need them to, because what she was building wasn't meant to impress. It was meant to endure, to grow, and to create something that mattered. Every summer, the Carters hosted their annual family BBQ at James and Margaret's sprawling suburban home. What had started as a casual tradition during Evelyn's elementary school years had slowly morphed into an unspoken showcase wrapped in the language of togetherness, but steeped in silent comparisons. For Evelyn, it was always the same. Her sister Lauren arrived first, glowing in a designer-dressed diamond ring, catching the light expertly recounting million-dollar deals. Her brother Ethan played the charming entertainer, earning back pats and loud laughs from uncles. And Evelyn, she was usually the last to be acknowledged, assigned to the kids' table, asked to help with drinks or set up the folding chairs. This year was no different. Evelyn pulled into the quiet cul-de-sac in her sleek electric car, a rare French bottle of wine-riding shotgun, an intended gift for her father. She wore a crisp white linen shirt, understated yet elegant. The watch on her wrist alone could pay a month's rent for most, but to her family it didn't scream success. "She's here," someone called from the backyard. Margaret emerged with a practiced smile. Her eyes flicked over Evelyn's outfit with the kind of polite appraisal that always felt like a quiet test. "Oh, good, you made it." Lauren and Ben just arrived. They brought a seafood platter from that new gourmet shop in Beacon Hill, very upscale. Evelyn returned the smile and offered the wine. "Thought Dad might enjoy this." Margaret glanced at the label Chateau Margaux 2010 and nodded vaguely. "Lovely. I'll put it with the others." Nothing more was said. In the backyard, the atmosphere resembled a tribute to Lauren. Aunts and uncles formed a circle around her as she held court, recounting recent boardroom meetings and how CEO Robert Whitman had personally requested her for the Sterling Asia-Pacific initiative. Evelyn's father, gin in hand, wandered over to her. "You're still at that little tech company, right?" he asked, with a tone that hovered between politeness and pity. "Still there," Evelyn replied. "Well, persistence is admirable. But Sterling's hiring, you know. With Lauren's referral, they'd make space. Great benefits, health, retirement, vacation days." Evelyn smiled, resisting the urge to say that she offered all of those things and more to her own employees. She gravitated toward the food station, dodging questions like, "So what exactly do you do again?" "Computers, right?" "Like IT." "My husband just hired someone to fix the printer. Maybe you could send a resume." Kenneth Lauren's husband was one of the few who treated her with consistent respect. Spotting her slicing watermelon, he grinned. "Hiding out over here?" "You guessed it," Evelyn replied. "Lauren's a little tense. Her boss is stopping by. Wants to meet the family. Robert Whitman. You probably haven't heard of him." Evelyn didn't mention that she'd spoken with Whitman that morning, finalizing terms on a deal that would soon rock everyone's world. Lunch played out like every other year. Lauren and her parents occupied the main table, basking in admiration. Evelyn was placed with teenage cousins and a perpetually unemployed uncle. Toasts were made in Lauren's honor. Every compliment, every glance of pride went to her. "And Evelyn?" She just smiled, because she knew this familiar performance was about to end spectacularly. Evelyn never needed a spotlight. She only ever wanted not to be invisible. But in her family, her presence was often treated like an afterthought, like an unwashed dish, or a folding chair someone forgot to straighten. At this year's BBQ, that truth became more glaring than ever. After helping set up dessert, Evelyn stepped into a quiet corner of the yard to take a call. It was Danielle Novatek's COO. "The Sterling paperwork is updated. All adjustments to the middle management retention packages have been approved," Danielle reported. "Perfect. Send the final version through the secure channel. I'll sign it before dinner." Evelyn replied, her eyes scanning the crowd still orbiting around her sister. When she returned, Margaret was arranging pastries and handed her a tray. "Evelyn, can you bring this to the side table? You're always so good with the practical stuff." It sounded like praise, but it was a subtle reminder of her default role, the helper, the behind-the-scenes daughter. Evelyn smiled and complied. There was no need to correct the narrative. Time was about to do that for her. At the table, Aunt Nancy leaned over and whispered, "Still single, sweetie." Brenda's son just finalized his divorce. He works in insurance. Very stable. "I'm focused on growing my company," Evelyn answered politely. "Well, sure, but don't forget about family. That biological clock won't wait forever." Once comments like that would have stung. Now they simply confirmed what Evelyn had always known to her family. She was still the daughter who needed direction, not the woman negotiating multi-million-dollar deals. Later, she joined a conversation between her father and Uncle Frank about real estate investments. Evelyn chimed in with a sharp observation about rising property values in the tech corridor. A minute later, her father repeated her insight verbatim and earned a round of nods and praise. Evelyn said nothing. This wasn't the first time her ideas had been repurposed without credit, and it wouldn't be the last. As Lauren regaled the crowd with tales of Sterling's global leadership team, Evelyn sat quietly at the edge of the lawn, observing the party like an outsider. She wasn't bitter, just clear-eyed. Every sentence she once considered saying she realized she already had just to people who never truly listened. But she didn't need to raise her voice, because in just a few hours the very world her family revered titles, power, wealth, would be forced to call her by a different name, CEO. As the family BBQ reached its peak, desserts, plated glasses refilled, Evelyn had begun planning her exit. There were emails to address, documents to sign before tomorrow's press release. But a sudden shift in the atmosphere stopped her mid-step. "He's early," Lauren whispered, smoothing her dress and hair. He wasn't supposed to be here yet. The energy in the yard changed instantly. Heads turned toward the driveway. Conversations halted. Margaret straightened the tablecloth. Lauren stood tall, the look of someone about to deliver a presentation to a boardroom. "That's Robert Whitman," Ben said quietly. "CEO of Sterling? Probably just dropping in for a few minutes." Evelyn stepped back toward the drink table, watching but not approaching. She didn't need to be center stage, at least not yet. Robert Whitman entered the yard with quiet authority. Tall, silver-haired, dressed in crisp weekend casual, he moved through the space like a man accustomed to commanding attention. His eyes scanned the gathering, pausing briefly on Lauren, then locked on Evelyn. The shift in his expression was instant polite recognition giving way to surprised familiarity. "Evelyn Carter," he said warmly, his voice carrying across the lawn. "I didn't expect to see you here, Madam CEO." 9 words. Just 9 words, and the backyard froze. Margaret's wine glass stopped midair. Lauren's mouth opened, eyes wide. James Carter stood completely still. A heavy silence dropped over the scene like a curtain. "Good to see you in person, Robert," Evelyn replied calmly. Whitman reached out and shook her hand, both of his clasping hers. Then he looked around, frowning slightly. "Did I say something wrong?" "You." "No, my sister," Lauren stammered. "Your sister," Whitman raised an eyebrow. "Evelyn is the CEO of Novatech, the company acquiring Sterling Capital." Lauren swayed. Ben caught her elbow just in time. The murmurs started instantly buzzing like static through the stunned crowd. Margaret sank into the nearest chair, whispering, "But she's a secretary." Whitman chuckled clearly, thinking it a joke. "She founded Novatech 8 years ago, one of the most respected names in the sector." James Carter's voice, unusually soft, broke the tension. "You're really the CEO?" Evelyn nodded. "I am." Lauren's face was pale. "I've worked at Sterling for 8 years. And you're buying it." "This isn't personal," Evelyn said gently. "It's a business decision." The silence that followed was different now. Not just shocked, but rearranging itself around a new truth. All eyes once dismissive now landed on Evelyn with stunned realization, and she remained exactly where she'd been standing, composed in the center of a storm she didn't need to shout to summon. 8 years of being underestimated, 9 words to bring it all crashing down. The backyard remained frozen in stunned silence after Robert Whitman's 9-word revelation. A few relatives still looked confused. Others were rapidly piecing it together. Evelyn, the sister they thought did something vague with computers, was actually the CEO acquiring Lauren's company. Lauren tried to recover with a thin smile, but her eyes betrayed her shock. You sat there, listening to me go on about Sterling all these years, and said nothing. Evelyn didn't flinch. She met her sister's gaze evenly. I tried to say something, more than once, but no one listened. Their parents still seemed dazed. James spoke quietly, almost to himself. But you never told us your company was that big. Evelyn gave a small, knowing smile. I did. The problem wasn't that I didn't speak, it's that no one ever asked a follow-up. No one argued, because everyone remembered the pattern, Evelyn being cut off mid-sentence. Stories changed the moment she began to share. She'd mentioned opening a Tokyo office, and Margaret pivoted to talk about Michael's new girlfriend. She brought up a public health platform only for Uncle Frank to ask when she planned on settling down. Lauren clutched her wine glass. So, you've known all this time I was working for the company you were acquiring. Yes, and you didn't say anything, because you wanted to humiliate me today. Evelyn shook her head. No. I had no idea Robert would be here. I didn't plan this. I stayed quiet because I've gotten used to being underestimated. Another pause stretched across the yard. Then Kenneth, Lauren's husband, spoke, his voice low but clear. She tried. I remember last year Evelyn started talking about an international expansion deal, and your mom cut her off and said, "Let's talk about Lauren's promotion. Evelyn's computer stuff can wait." Silence. It wasn't angry. It was heavy with realization. Robert Whitman, sensing the emotional terrain was becoming too personal, prepared to leave. But before he did, he turned to Evelyn. I'm looking forward to working with you. Novatech is going to take Sterling to the next level. As he exited the yard, something else shifted too. The carefully maintained family hierarchy began to crack. Eyes softened. Glances turned inward. Apologies hovered unsaid. Evelyn didn't need them to fall at her feet. She didn't need public regret. All she had ever wanted was to be seen clearly, not as the quirky sister, not as the invisible one, but as a woman who had built something real with her own hands on her own terms. After Robert Whitman left the backyard, Lauren disappeared. No one asked where she'd gone, but everyone sensed it. She needed space. A place to breathe, or maybe just to process the shock that had shaken her carefully built image. Evelyn found her upstairs, sitting alone in their childhood bedroom. The room was quiet, strangely still. Lauren perched on the edge of the bed, her shoulders stiff, eyes fixed on some distant point that didn't exist. Evelyn paused in the doorway. Can I come in? Lauren didn't look up but gave a small nod. Evelyn sat down across from her, leaving a respectful distance, not too close, but close enough to be present. I'm sorry if today felt like a blindside, Evelyn said gently, but it was never my intention to embarrass you. Lauren took a deep breath. It's not the embarrassment, really. I don't know where I stand anymore. For years I thought I was the one with the plan. The successful one, the one Mom and Dad could point to with pride, and you were still figuring it out. She gave a bitter laugh. Turns out while I was busy looking successful, you actually succeeded. Evelyn didn't rush to defend herself. She let Lauren speak uninterrupted. Lauren's voice softened. I don't know how to process this. You're the CEO of the parent company. Technically, I'm reporting up through you. You're still you, Evelyn replied calmly. Your work hasn't disappeared. Your accomplishments still matter. I'm not here to replace or compete. We're just standing in different places now. Silence hung between them, not cold, just contemplative. Did you ever think about telling me privately? Lauren asked. Before all this exploded, Evelyn hesitated, then spoke honestly. I didn't. I never really thought you'd want to know. That's not how we've ever related, sharing, supporting, confiding. You've always been the one people praised. I've always been the one they told to try harder. Eventually, I stopped trying to merge my personal life with the family narrative. Lauren nodded slowly, no longer defensive. I see that now. Evelyn didn't expect this conversation to fix everything, but in that room where they once shared bunk beds and childhood secrets, something had shifted. The rivalry softened, the roles blurred, and in its place, maybe, just maybe, came a space for mutual understanding. After her conversation with Lauren, Evelyn returned to the backyard. The atmosphere had shifted. The cheerful buzz had dulled into something quieter, curious, cautious, and slightly uncomfortable. No more laughter at her expense. No more dismissive glances. Now they looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Her father James was standing with Uncle Frank near the bar, repeating Evelyn's earlier investment advice, this time with credit. Evelyn said the tech corridor is about to take off. Might be worth looking into. Evelyn offered a quiet smile. She didn't need applause or overdue praise, but at least they were finally listening. A few relatives began approaching her. Aunt Nancy leaned in, voice low. You know I have a granddaughter studying computer science. Maybe you could give her some advice. A cousin who used to barely say hello hovered nearby and murmured, Your company's site is really impressive. Are you hiring by any chance? Evelyn didn't judge. She felt lighter, actually. If it took status to earn their respect, so be it. She didn't need unconditional love anymore. But she also refused to settle for blind loyalty family that loved only what they understood. She spotted her mother Margaret standing near the outdoor kitchen, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Evelyn walked over. Would you like a slice of cheesecake? Margaret asked, her voice softer than usual. I saved you a piece. Thanks, Mom, Evelyn replied, accepting the plate. In her mother's eyes, something had shifted. Not dominance, not pride, just the unfamiliar realization that her daughter had grown into someone she no longer fully understood. A little later, Michael found her. Unlike the others, he didn't seem awkward, just genuine. You're incredible, he said. I feel kind of awful. I never really asked about your work before. Evelyn gave his shoulder a light squeeze. It's okay. You know now. As the party slowly wound down, guests began making a point to say goodbye to Evelyn personally, something that had never happened before. But she didn't bask in belated validation. She held on to one truth for the first time: they weren't looking at her through the lens of failure. And that for Evelyn was the beginning of something better. A version of family that wasn't built on obligation or outdated roles, but on the decision to see each other truly as they were. 1 week after the family BBQ, Evelyn returned to her penthouse apartment in Boston, not with the usual heaviness that followed family holidays, but with a quiet, grounded clarity. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't revenge. It was alignment. A feeling of simply being where she belonged. The apartment hadn't changed. Still serene, sunlit, every corner curated with purpose. Evelyn poured herself a cup of tea, opened the balcony doors, and sat in her favorite wooden chair facing the Charles River. No shouting, no backhanded compliments, no patronizing glances. Just Evelyn, whole-centered, needing nothing to prove. She thought about her family, not with resentment or sadness, but with honesty. From now on, family gatherings wouldn't be stages for validation. They'd be choices: join when it felt right, step back when necessary. She was no longer the daughter trying to earn her place. She was the woman who had defined it for herself. That night, an email arrived from Sterling's CEO. The board had officially approved the merger. Evelyn read it without fanfare, no celebratory dance, no calls to brag. Just a quiet smile. She had once imagined this moment as a medal ceremony. Now it was simply the natural reward of long-term clarity and steady effort. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. I read the article about you this morning. Part of me feels proud. Part of me feels ashamed. But most of all, I know you deserve it. Evelyn typed back simply, Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. She knew there would still be dinner's awkward silences and boundaries to manage. But the difference now, she wouldn't enter hoping to be seen. She'd walk in knowing she didn't need to be. Freedom wasn't about leaving her family behind. Freedom was returning to herself even in the presence of those who never quite understood her.